Hello, this is my review on 2003 X-Men sequel called X-Men 2 United. I give this movie a 10 out of 10. This movie is very fun, very imaginative, very kick-ass, very creative, loosely based off the X-Men comics. Just like the first one was, loosely based off of the X-Men comics. Because it's trying to uh, for the reason why I say it's loosely based off the X-Men comics, it doesn't look like an X-Men movie in terms of style at all. And also the X-Men had none of them, not a single one of them, or the villains have the comic book accurate costumes from the comics. Not even Magneto has his costume from the comics. And Mystique, well, she's nude because she doesn't need her comics costume. So she's nude, so I guess that's the only change I didn't mind. The fact that they gave us a nude Mystique instead of giving her a comic book accurate costume. Like that we saw from the 90s X-Men cartoon show. When she played a small role in the show. In later episodes, I can't remember what episode that was. Season it was, but I remember seeing that. And, I would just say the only, I will say I didn't mind the change. I actually like the change, the fact the X-Men reimagining design on Mystique because she's nude. And she's blue. Still. She still has the blue skin. From the comics. But it looks more different from the comics. See, in the comics, it's just like a blue skin. But here in the movies that Bryan Singer reimagined, the skin a little different. Like, she has like some scales on her skin or that let her, that basically turn when she transforms in shapeshifts, and her skin transforms like inside out. It's kind of it morphs. I know it was the skin is the first thing that morphs. Where the scales are the first things that pretty much morphs before anything else morphs on her body. I thought that was cool. Design. I thought that was cool. Pretty cool how she has sort of like her. So she has like sort of like a part of her skin has sort of like a reptilian scales like on that blue. Part of her skin has that little design feature. Makes instead of just all blue skin that's all blue, but the same. So her skin's Mystique's skin is also a little is is also reimagined also. Then the so But that's okay, because you admit, uh, I mean, I don't feel like, I understand why Brian Singer made these changes that he made. It's because when he was making the first X-Men movie, I found out, if you like, apparently he wasn't a fan of the comics, but loved the concept of the X-Men, but wanted to tell it like it could happen in our reality, but wanted to explore the sci-fi political elements of the X-Men and take it, tell it more in our world and less and grounded, and basically not give what the comic book fans wanted. So, considering that this is a very loosely adaptation intended to be a loose adaptation of the X-Men that was very financially and critically successful by audience, or was it by critics? I can't remember, okay? Or the sequel was, and the first two, I remember the first two ones, a lot of people are talking about positive about the first two X-Men movies. And, I thought the third one was as good as the first two ones, but, other people were a little let down by it, but I don't know why. What else were they expecting from that movie? That's loose. Oh, yeah, I'm sorry. The X-Men fans were finally disappointed that they didn't told the Phoenix story saga from the comics that Bryan Singer promised he would have told. Okay, first of all, he wouldn't have. He would have done his own thing with the Phoenix saga, and would have told it in more grounded reality, like he did with the first two X-Men films, and he wouldn't have brought what we wanted. He wouldn't have basically told the story he would have wanted us to have, okay? Those X-Men films who are crazy, seeing Bryan Singer's the answer to be all X-Men 3 fiasco. Yeah, I know, like that movie, but come on. I know it was a fiasco, but then again, I thought the first two were a little bit fiascos. But I ended up liking them anyway. And I think the first three X movies are just as good as the next. As all in the X-Men trilogy, one X-Men movie is as good as the next for me in the original trilogy of X-Men that Fox brought to us by Fox Studios. And also directed by Bryan Singer, at least the first two ones were. And brought to us by the creative mind of Bryan Singer. That radically changed everything and reimagined the X-Men, and then inspired comic book creators to create Ultimate X-Men comic book run from the Ultimate Comics. That's why Wolverine doesn't have his costume in the Ultimate Comics. And why he looks more like Hugh Jackman's Wolverine than, well, Wolverine we know and love from the comics, okay? And this thing, if we never had Bryan Singer's reimagining loosely based off of the X-Men comics with the same name for the first two X-Men, for X-Men and X-Men 2 United, give a solid 10 out of 10. And third is the third one I give a 10 out of 10 because it's all just as good. But this is my review on X-Men 2, isn't it? Yeah, I'll review all three of them in these videos. Why not? Or at least X-Men 3 and X-Men. No, I'm not going to review all three. I'm just going to review the last two. X-Men 3 and X-Men 2. And what I liked about X-Men 2 is a lot of things about X-Men 2 I like. I like the fact about X-Men 2 that Cyclops gets overpowered very easy in this movie by Lady Deathstrike and goes out like a little bitch. I love that he gets overpowered. It's very funny. We then later realized that Lady Deathstrike's being controlled by this guy called, and I'm sorry, she's not called Lady Deathstrike here. That's for comic book names nerds left like me know her as Lady Deathstrike. And yeah, so she's some girl that's in the X-Men to knock off another experimentation gone that Strike was able to control. That has similar powers and abilities to Wolverine, like healing factor and claws, but instead of 3, she has like 10, and oh my god, they all come out of her fingers. The tip of her fingers. Um, how is that possible? No. I'm sorry. How is that possible? Ryan Singer should get questioned. Like, how is that possible? Like, how do those claws, like, come out for a tip of her fingers, and so easily, and where? How does he go back in so easily? Like how? Confusing. How does she get them back into her fingers? You know, it kind of makes sense for Wolverine's because we at least see his X-rays in the movies, and we see that with there's like this room for his. We see his claws base. We see his X-rays, and we see where the claws begin and end. So it's like, but Lady Deathstrike is like, why couldn't you go as a comic book version of Lady Deathstrike if you were going to just do that with her and make her a a Weapon X program, an experiment that needs to be controlled but enslaved by this guy called, I forget, the guy, General Stryker, I believe. Yeah, he created the Weapon X program, who created Wolverine in his claws, the silver claws he has. And he just thinks it was this person, but now enslaves it by would take away the free will of the person. I thought that was a little strange design, questionable design from Brian. If that was Brian Singer's design, I'm guessing it is. But if so, I still think it's a strange decision, but so cool. And one thing that I love about Bryan Singer's X-Men 2 United is his reimagining of Nightcrawler for his vision of X-Men 2 United. Very cool. And he kind of kicked ass. And has like the coolest entrance. Once where he has the perfect entrance for Nightcrawler's character. Once we're introduced to the real Nightcrawler after he breaks free from his being brainwashed and controlled, and he's the reason why Nightcrawler attacked the president and attempted the attack and failed at the attack on the president because Nightcrawler broke free from the control eventually and snapped out of it before he took the president's life and went through with it, and then teleported out there and got his ass out of there. And it's explained the movie and later on slowly throughout the movie, these twists and turns that the movie takes itself so seriously with the storytelling and twists and turns, and I appreciate for that. That what Bryan Singer did for his reimagining of the X-Men from the comic book lore. Because this is nothing like the X-Men from the comic book lore. Let's get this straight. If you guys like these X-Men, or hate the X-Men from these movies, you gotta understand, these are loosely based off the X-Men comics. These versions of the X-Men are not even like as overpowered from the X-Men from the comics powers were. And they're not even as, well, what's the word? Timeless, memorable as the X-Men from the comics. These Bryan Singer's reimagining of the X-Men, that's my opinion, though. And the reason why I'm a little bring this up because I'm not saying a non-faithful adaptation of the X-Men cannot be done, because it can be done and it can be a success. Bryan Singer did it with the first two X-Men movies. He radically reimagined the X-Men, took a very popular Marvel brand that a lot of readers liked, and radically reimagined, went against the source material deliberately, and just slapped the X-Men title on it. And barely followed the source material at all, outside of the name, and also people being prejudiced to mutants, and that there's a team called X-Men. But other than that, the characters are pretty much the same. Even though they don't act or look anything like the same. And for example, for the X-Men 1, when they turned Kenner Kelly into a mutant, and instead of him being a reliable, working with, instead of working with the X-Men, helping the X-Men, and being the only one of the humans that help the X-Men, it is a little weird seeing that Senator Kelly, who is known for helping X-Men in the 90s show, and to be honest, I just think that they brought, why did they brought him in this movie? It's not like he has any doesn't really, he's pretty much a off character on camera. His character doesn't give them a screen time, but he gets more screen time than the X-Men do, that Wolverine interacts with. Once they recruit try to recruit Wolverine, but Wolverine turns down the offer and tells them saying, "This is the stupidest fucking thing I've ever heard." That was a funny line, a little bit. Perfect line. Funny line that Wolverine said. Yeah. When he's like mocking all of them sarcastically, all of their names the professor gave them. And this is the first, and takes place in the first 2000 X-Men movie. I know I'm not going. I said I was going to review the first one, but I am now because I'm remembering. I can remember it perfectly fine. Enough. So, and I will say, I think the best character on Team X-Men is Charles Xavier, reimagined by Bryan Singer for his reimagining of Charles Xavier. It's very actually enjoyed it. He was my favorite X-Men character in the X-Men trilogy on the Team X-Men. Even more than Wolverine, a little bit. Because I just thought he was a bit of a show stealer. That he was played by his character was a bit of a show stealer a bit. And I was a bit sad that they killed him off in X-Men 3 Last Stand. Very brutally, actually. And so I love the reimagining world that Bryan Singer did with the X-Men. And I love the reimagining that the world got the conclusion for the time being in X-Men The Last Stand, which was the third installment. Also known as X-Men 3. You know, the third one. It's called X-Men The Last Stand. Okay, a big problem I think I have with X-Men The Last Stand, why I don't think it's good as X2. And I think, well, it has something to do with Wolverine. X-Men 2 was the first time Wolverine was pretty much the center of the intention of the entire story. And the whole point of the story was, the whole story really revolved around and also was the first, also, okay, the first two that, I think the problem is the first two, why some people didn't like the first two, the X probably, my own guess is why people didn't like X3, but I could get into X3, even though I didn't see why other people didn't like why other people couldn't get into X3, I don't know why, but is it because Hugh Jackman's Wolverine doesn't have as much center and tension to the plot in X3? Am I the one that knows that? I mean, that X3 is more of a... They made X3 more of a teen narrative story. And X-Men Last Two was X-Men the first two, with Bryan Singer directing behind the wheel. It seems like he really wanted to focus on Wolverine and make it his story. Now, I don't know whose fault that is. Now I'm wondering, is that Kevin Feige's fault? Because, now I'm wondering, was that I'm wondering, is that Kevin Feige's fault or Bryan Singer's fault, or one of the teams that worked on the first two X-Men's fault? I don't know whose fault it is. I know Kevin Feige worked on the first X-Men movie with Bryan Singer. But I don't know whose fault this is that thought it was a great idea to make Logan for the. I think reason why I couldn't. I think the reason why it made us original older X-Men fans, the fans before the movies. I mean, I was, but then again, that's because I was a fan of the 90s show so much. The X-Men the Animated Series, and a little bit of the comics, too, okay? And so, I just thought it was, so, I'm just, what was I going to say? Fuck. X-Men 3. And versus X-Men, the first two X-Men movies. Oh, okay. I think the X-Men trilogy as a whole might feel a little incomplete and unfinished in a way, because maybe